It says we're live.
There we
G'day,
are.
Carl. G'day, Simon.
Hi,
Yes, good morning. How we doing?
It's the evening here, but it's the morning over there.
Yes.
Somehow, I
As
think we've
usual,
got the
I'm
best
waking
end
up.
of the deal. I think Simon's got the rough end of the deal.
me and Phil mostly, the night owls.
Yeah.
Transatlantic,
That's
Trans-Pacific crossing.
yeah. He and I are going to make a band, the Count and the Night Owls.
I look forward to that show then.
Phil doesn't know about it yet. That's the sound of Phil running away.
Yeah. We've got no one in the chat, but this show's a week late for a couple of reasons, but we won't bore anybody that watches the replay with reasons why. But it's always a pleasure to catch up with you guys. I especially enjoy the shows that we do together and the insights that you two provide on the topic that we discuss. So it's my pleasure, especially my greatest pleasure, to introduce tonight's topic, which is Jimi Hendrix.
The Mount
Always.
Rushmore of guitarists.
Always the number one guitarist in
Everything.
many guitar polls. All the guitar polls I've been reading over the last 20 or 30 years, if he's not number one, he's number two. Well deserved to be certainly in the top three. I would say it's my opinion that Jimi Hendrix would be in the top three rock guitarists in the world. That's my opinion.
Oh, probably. Yeah, I agree. Did more to take the guitar to where it is now than anybody else. I think that would be my opinion. I think that's my, where I think his greatest influence is he took it from being, with his Marshalls and his, the feedback and the fuzz, and took it to a whole new planet, and people have been exploring that planet ever since.
Well, I'm probably a little bit early in the discussion by saying this, but I think he had to go to England, and you being our resident English expert on the English perspective, certainly going to England contributed to him developing that all-round view that you just mentioned before, Simon. So
completely, yeah.
Yes,
good old Blighty.
so I'm going to let you two talk, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to listen and nod my head and ask you guys a few questions during the chat. So it's your guys' floor.
Off you go, Carl. Resident musicologist, Dr. Carl, will now take us away.
I'll try.
Yeah.
No, I just think I thought about this morning. I'll just before I go deep into his career, and especially the early career, in that 3 years, or late '66, early 1970, he put out a huge body of work, because we all know he did the what's the first album? Are You Experienced? Axis Boulder's Love, Electric Ladyland, Band of Gypsies, and then was it the Cry of Love?
Yeah, something like
and then after he died, as Eddie Kramer and a lot of these guys put it, the Bloodhounds and the Vultures came out, and there was just a body of work. Little Richard and live recordings and bootlegs, but it just goes to show you that he was a consummate musician. He was a singer, songwriter, guitar player, lead and rhythm, backwards, forwards, and upside down, and with his teeth. And really a showman, a flamboyant, perfect timing. He was at the right place at the right time, and England wasn't quite ready, but they received him well, and then the world became ready.
Yes, from here his career was launched, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Chaz Chandler, what a genius to have that foresight, and Linda Keith for borrowing Keith's guitar.
For those who don't know, Chaz Chandler, bass player from the Animals.
Yeah.
on all their
And
hits.
Linda Keith, ex-girlfriend of Keith Richards.
What, Chaz Chandler?
And, I'm glad that you guys mentioned Linda and Chaz, because I wasn't a
Was he frozen?
pushing Jimi Hendrix into Chaz's hands. It's interesting that that wasn't spoken about for a long time. So
No.
yeah,
What, that Linda Keith pushed Hendrix at Chaz Chandler?
yeah.
Yeah.
And legend has it on Red House, Noel Redding played the bass line on that six string Fender Strat.
Oh, really?
So,
Yeah.
And what's interesting, you'd remember this, and you'd probably remember this too, Simon. Obviously, the first album's a master. The Axis Boulder's Love's a masterpiece. The first album was half of all those amazing singles, but the really big album that took off was an album called Smash Hits. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was called Smash Hits. It was a compilation of all the singles.
Yeah.
And in America, it came out different, bit like the Beatles and the Stones, a slightly different track listing. But Gatefold, it had a wonderful poster of Jimmy and the Experience, Noel and Mitch Mitchell, all on horses. You seen that picture?
I have. Hold on a second. Wait a second.
Yeah, I think for me, Axis Boulder's Love was the key album for me when I was a young guy. Yeah. And then I fell in love with Hendrix again when they released that blues CD. When did that come out? That blues album, was that the mid 1990s?
1993.
Oh, that early?
About 93.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I've got number 26 in the world. Number 26, limited edition on vinyl, blue vinyl.
Wow.
Yeah, and that Born Under a Bad Sign is just phenomenal.
Oh, I love it. It's that's
It was actually a legitimate compilation, a legitimate post release, supervised and remastered properly. Because there's been so much crap released, eh?
Oh,
What's
well, I'm just looking here at Spotify. So you've got Songs for Groovy Children, which has come out in 2009. It's the Fillmore East record. I think Simon's going to get a record.
Or three. Actually, yeah, I was just wondering what I had. I got this. This is the first Jimi Hendrix
Hold on,
album.
Simon. Hold on, I'll present you. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the American cover.
It is
the American cover.
Well, it's the American
wow.
album because it's in stereo.
Oh,
The British version is in mono.
British mono or stereo, not true stereo mono, but the black cover had a black.
Oh.
Yeah. Whereas, this is obviously when I worked in the record shop, I obviously picked
Still
it up.
Shrink wrap.
Yeah, still in the shrink wrap. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shrink wrap's great. That'll have a two-tone or a three-color label.
Let's have a look. Let's see what.
It's called a steam. Oh, nice.
It's on
Beautiful.
reprise.
oh
Look at
wow.
that.
Neil Young, yeah.
yes. I'm trying to get it. There we are. Yeah, reprise. Yeah.
Nice.
Same record labels. Yeah, that's interesting. Reprise in America. Same. As you say, same record as Neil Young, amongst others. He's on reprise, isn't he? I seem to remember.
I always thought it was called reprise. It's reprise.
Reprise. If you're British, it's reprise.
It depends it depends what part of the world you come from.
What else have I got?
Sounds French. I'll grab a latte and a reprieve.
Here's another one, which is like it's a Radio 1
Oh,
sessions.
that's phenomenal.
Yeah, which is really good.
Our teenage years we were blowing speakers up with that. It's got a version of Hound Dog.
Yeah, that's
Hoochie
right.
Coochie
Yeah,
Man,
Hoochie Coochie Man.
and
Yeah,
it's got Beatles on Day Tripper backing vocals.
that's right. Day Tripper. Yeah.
Beatles.
Inside.
Yeah.
Cool cover.
That's
some
a
bits
very
pieces about
good
everything.
album.
Yeah, it's a really good album. Yeah.
That's where Stevie Ray Vaughan would have heard Driving South, probably from that album.
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't know if you. This is the first Hendrix album I bought.
Oh, awesome.
Do you see the film? Have you seen the film?
Yes.
Yeah.
Feels really good. Yeah. And I bought that's doing Red House. But yeah, I bought this. Pretty much when it came out. I think I've had it ever since. Yeah, lots of cool photographs of him as a kid. Go that way. I'll peek out from behind it. Of course.
So how many hours do people spend sitting down on a beanbag with that on the turntable, just looking at those pictures, reading the words,
rolling a big one? And then, of course, the other one I have is the dodgy one.
Oh, Electric Ladyland.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But with the original cover. Can I show it? Are you cool for me to show it?
Yeah.
That's all right. Just checking.
Yeah.
Yes, that's with the original cover, and of course, then they
outstanding.
they put it out. There we are.
That's outstanding.
That's very cool. Look at that amazing picture on it. Can you get that? Yeah, you can get that.
Oh,
There we are.
yeah.
Massive, cool picture of Hendrix
Oh,
and stuff. Great record.
The original version of that, the British version's worth hundreds of pounds.
Oh wow!
I don't think this is. I wouldn't have thought this was worth anything, particularly in this way. It's probably worth a bit for the cover, but I don't even buy it. These days, can you buy it with the original cover? I bet you can.
Well, I don't think you can.
Is it an original, Simon, or a repress?
The honest answer, I'm not sure. I mean, I presume it's a repress. I don't think, but I don't know how long I must do to research it, but I don't know how long the original cover lasted and stuff.
The original vinyls, as a black label. The repress will be a red label.
I'm sure this has got a red label. I don't think this has got a black label. There you go. I see it's red Polydor label.
Yeah. He was signed to a
track, wasn't he? Track. Yeah. Which is like the Who. The Who was signed to Track, wasn't it? Their record label.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I got a few. I don't know.
I think to give Jimi Hendrix his due, we've got to start from the beginning.
CD. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
let's travel back in time.
Those early 60s when he started playing as a professional musician, people didn't realize he was a backing musician for Little Richard. Was it Curtis Mayfield?
Curtis Knight. Curtis Knight, sorry. Yeah.
And as we both talked about,
and of course
shows,
the Isley Brothers.
It was popular in the South, the R&B Chitlin circuit.
The Chitlin circuit, yeah.
Yeah, which was mainly black-only clubs like juke joints and what they call them, holes in the wall, one-night stand places, and that's where he cut his teeth for about 4 years. And that's when, if you read his books, he would study, for example, the showmanship of Little Richard. He would study the amazing rhythm guitar playing of Curtis Mayfield. He would study the dance moves of James Brown. He was a very intelligent guy. All this stuff was, the guy that you saw in 67 was a polished professional musician based on all those hard years of touring. Yeah.
Good morning, Phil Mosley. Wow. How you doing? I know Phil was live earlier, so I hope we didn't trample on him.
G'day, Phil.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that is the key thing. Is he'd spent the last 5 years playing on the professional circuit, backing up,
Yeah.
as we said, the Isley Brothers, and quite pretty well known
That's right,
groups.
Isley Brothers. Yes,
the Isley Brothers.
Isley Brothers.
Being in their bands, getting sacked for being too flash and stuff, but and obviously learning all those tricks as well, didn't he? Learned all those tricks, playing behind your head and playing with your teeth and stuff, and
yeah, because it was anything to make the girls dance and the crowd get excited. It was all, the other guy, there's a guy called Earl King. Another guy, I've forgotten his name, will come to me. And these are the guys that would play behind their head. T-Bone Walker played between his knees.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And they would have a 200-foot guitar chord and play outside and come back into the club eventually.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that's really important, isn't it? The way you learn all those crowd-pleasing tricks and, performance and things like that, as a sideman. It's
that Stones song, which was originally done by Don Covey, Mercy Mercy, the original version has Hendrix on the solo.
Does it? Yeah.
So he did a little bit of session work too.
Yeah. And yes, it's amazing, really, isn't it? That's why when Chaz went to see him in that club in New York, that what he was seeing, as you said, is the polished, the polished musician, massive experience, so to speak, doing loads of different things.
Guitar Slim was
Guitar Slim.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, you kind of forget, don't you, that those blues guys, that's primarily dance music, isn't it? They had to get a crowd dancing. We just, the John Lee Hooker thing, isn't it? You stamp your foot, and that's the beat, and very percussive kind of, and that gives you, and people will dance to it. Sit up and dance, kind of that kind of thing. And he obviously learnt all of that doing, doing his.
Because when Chaz discovered Hendrix, it was in the Greenwich Village in New York, late 60s.
Greenwich, Carl.
Yes.
Greenwich.
Sorry.
We're English. Sorry. Greenwich.
So the icing on the cake with Hendrix towards the end of just honing who he was and what he became and what we know him as was the influence of Bob Dylan with the lyrics.
His Bobness. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Because he was a fantastic fan of Bob Dylan, wasn't he? Kind of. Yeah, big time. Yeah. What fascinated me about reading about his early life is that even for instance, when he was at elementary school, which I don't know, it must be infant school, isn't it? He used to carry around a broom to emulate playing the guitar. I mean, that's a kid who wanted to play the guitar, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is in the mid 50s. When he went to elementary school. But and
it's the same old story as lots of them. They first guitar had strings missing, and his dad lent him $5. He got a acoustic, and then the acoustic got wore out, and then maybe saved up enough money to go to the pawn shop and get an electric guitar and restrung it. And classic story of someone very hungry, very poor, and very modest background, but a desire to play.
Yeah. Boy, he joined a group who played professional. And he got fired in his first gig for showmanship, showing off too much. That's lovely, isn't it? It's kind of.
I think, Simon, you talked about a funny story about a year ago on this show about Engelbert Humperdinck brought out Hendrix to fill in an hour's gap. Is that right?
God, yeah. Well, they usually do those, those pop tour, the package tours in the UK. You go around with loads of other bands, and yes, that's right. So he supported no less a person than Engelbert Humperdinck. You can't imagine two people more opposed. But apparently one night he actually sat in with Engelbert because his guitarist was indisposed in some way. I can't remember why he's indisposed, but he was indisposed. So Hendrix actually sat in with Humperdinck, which you've got to say is pretty cool of him, isn't it? Music, no barriers. well, you want a guitar? I'm a guitar player. I've done loads of this stuff. Oh, no problem. I'll just turn up and play.
Introducing Jimi Hendrix and experience
Yeah.
with no other than Engelbert
Yes.
Humperdinck.
Oh dear. So very, very crooner sort of things. It's Mr. Arvin Gaunt. Good morning, Arvin. How you doing? Hope you're good.
G'day,
That's
Arvin.
right. Yeah. Look him up. Yes, if you want the antithesis of Hendrix, that would be Engelbert. which is lovely.
Chaz, and his infinite wisdom, a bit like Paul Samuel Smith and the Yardbirds bass players, some of these guys that went on to be producers and arrangers. He would have known that there was a guitar cult thing brewing in England, right?
Clearly.
And the Clapton, the Page.
Well, yes, the Clapton, Page, Beck thing. Yeah. Well, they were there, weren't they?
And he thought, why don't we get this guy to England to blow the place apart? Let's grab. You talked about AC/DC before. Let's bring in some TNT into the club.
Absolutely.
A couple of dynamite sticks, a black dynamite stick with an afro wick.
Well, completely, yeah. I mean, absolutely, kind of that. Yes, bringing the exotic to the UK, kind of thing.
Wow,
it's amazing, really.
Chaz brought him to England, and he one of the first things he said he'd love to jam with Eric. Is that right?
Yeah, one of the first nights he turned up, didn't he? He turned up and Cream were playing. I can't remember where it was, somewhere. And he went to see Cream, didn't he? Chaz took him to see Cream.
That was one of the conditions on him going to the UK, because he said that he was friends with Clapton. He said, Eric, and he
London
said,
Polytechnic.
Yeah. I'll take you to meet him, and jumped on stage, and the world went holy shit, because certainly Eric Clapton did.
Yeah, he went up and said to Eric, "Can I sit in on a couple of numbers while they're playing?" It's like
nobody does that.
Well, Clapton said, "I had a funny feeling about him," and he did say, "Of course." I wonder why he said, "Of course." It's kind of, if I went out and said to Clapton, "Let me sit in," he'd like, "Fuck off," clear off, Sonny, quite rightly. But apparently got up and he did Killing Floor, Howling Wolves, Killing Floor.
No, well, Clapton apparently. Clapton apparently looked at the guy and judged Jimmy by his looks. Obviously, he was a black guy, coming up to him, pretty cool, and said, can I have a go? And whether or not that's a positive or a negative in Eric making that decision, the point is he made the decision, and they became together probably the two most instrumental guitarists in the world there for about a 3 or 4 year period.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, apparently he got up, he did all his tricks, played with his teeth behind his back, But what interesting, Eric says, he said it wasn't in an upstaging sense at all.
No.
And that was it. That's what he did, and he walked off, and it, wasn't kind of trying to upstage Clapton. It was just, this is how I do it.
This is what I do.
It Eric and Eric talking to Jeff Beck or Pete Townsend, or Pete Townsend talking to Jeff Beck saying, "Listen, mate, we might be out of a job.
Give up." Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I haven't been able to confirm that quote in the last 10 years. So I haven't. I've been researching that quote for a long time. So if anyone can actually provide me with where that was said, I'd be grateful, because I can't find it.
Where I read it was they met up at Eric was big into Italian movies, silent movies, and black and white art movies. And, they just had a quiet word. It might have been Pete Townsend, someone, definitely two English guitar players who were obviously big, and they just were threatened. We're threatened but excited all at the same time.
Oh, well, certainly Keith Richards was certainly threatened in more than one way too. So Keith Richards is on record by saying, "Shit, this guy's really good. This is a problem."
It's funny, isn't it, how that
Yeah,
sort of
because if you
that they can't they've got a competitive edge. There's obviously a competitive edge between the British guitarist, and yet this other guy, they can't admire the hell out of him, but they can't help but feeling also that he's a threat in some way. It's like,
is it called cutting heads or cutting axes?
Cutting axes. But I think what happens though with these guys is, we hear these reports early on, but then when you do a bit more research and actually find out that they actually became quite close in the end, towards the end of Jimmy's life, they were devastated. That was one of the reasons everyone talks about Eric Clapton going on his heroin holiday because of Mrs. Harrison. That was certainly a component, but he was grieving. There's another part of Eric Clapton too. He was grieving because he loved Jimi Hendrix. So there was that unresolved issue of Jimi Hendrix passing, having a big effect on him. So yeah, these guys are just as much as we love them and look at them, I certainly do, as guitar gods, and in the end they're still men, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
completely.
off stage, I think Jimi Hendrix was extremely quiet, very intelligent,
Reserved.
Oh yeah.
and if you there's that great interview on the Dick Cavett show, and he's just amazing.
Yeah.
Great, quick-witted, dry sense of humor.
Very cool.
Yeah, super cool, and always wanting to talk and jam, and I think he just lived for music, and music lived for him. He was the guitar was an extension of his soul, and like a third arm almost.
There's definitely something supernatural there. Yeah, definitely.
When you see him playing at Woodstock, it's just so effortless, and he makes it look so easy.
But in a sense, that's the result of playing guitar since the late 50s. So you've been playing guitar, and if and the tales are that broom tail is particularly, but the stories are he used to go to the toilet with his guitar. Never took it off. And if you're, and obviously, this is the key thing. If you're that dedicated and you've played that much, and you must have played hundreds of gigs, sessions, loads of different bands, loads of different styles. Also, one hesitates to bring it up, but the 10,000 hours thing. When he was a kid, playing is, I think and learning all those tricks and all those things from his fellow bluesmen and stuff. That when you arrive, you've probably been playing 12, 15 years. Probably 10 or 12 years. But you arrived and you are not only the finished article, but you're ready to do something else. And I think that the things like England, coming to England, Chas Harding was big breaking in more than one way. It's it's about also the kit, because if you think about it, in America he would have been playing with Fenders and stuff like that, which is not really conducive to he comes to England, and what does he find? Jim Marshall, and and that thing about having Marshall stacks, with a fuzz pedal and thing, which are all British things, they're Dunlop.
Anawar, that was British
Anawar,
too.
Dunlop Wise, he's British as well.
Yeah.
But what you get is you get well, indeed, he had Vox, he played Vox. Vox made him an amp,
and a couple of guys that looked like him with the same haircut, but just slightly different tone of skin.
Yes, Noel and Noel Redding and
you got nice,
Mitch Bishop.
Join my band.
But really about the same as now, isn't it? Boy bands. You've got nice hair. Do you want to join my boy band? Don't see much difference, really, if you put it like that, does it?
I think you said that, though, after they jammed together.
Probably, yeah. But don't you think that that it's it's more than that? That the things in England, things in the UK, that he wouldn't have had access to in America, gave him the sound. They gave him the ability to extend the electric guitar out, from where it was, that kind of in plus the playing and the the sort of the
And the
upside down
confidence,
guitar and
Simon.
all of that stuff.
It
Confidence, yes,
gave Jimmy the confidence to assume a persona on the stage that maybe, and I don't want to give our American brothers and sisters a kick in the backside here, but maybe it would have been a little bit difficult for him, considering the time in America, to be maybe that flamboyant. Because as we all know, when he went back to America, he went to that pop festival, and he did something that that put him in the history books.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. But you could see that that it's an alignment of a lot of things. Clapton had got Jim Marshall to make him the 50-watt amp that would fit in the back of the car. Jim Marshall was making 4x12 stack, or 8x12, so they had to cut down because they were so heavy you couldn't move them around. One of the things, you turn, Hendrix then turns up and finds Marshall, and then with his Strat and the Marshall and the 2 or 3 pedals he had, bingo, you've got a soundscape that you never had before. And Carl, you've gone silent. What did you do?
He's probably had a call come through.
No, he's still. Oh, is he? Is he on the phone?
I don't know.
He's now gone sideways as well. Who knows? But
he'll come back
he
in.
Skipped off. He'll come back in a minute.
Isn't it interesting, Simon? I want to ask you a question. So Jimi Hendrix went to a Strat, which is interesting with Marshalls, and didn't go to a Gibson. His idol, arguably, Eric Clapton, was playing SGs, and Les Pauls. Interesting that he didn't go the Gibson way.
And you're right, that is interesting. But I think that, we've talked about this, haven't we? That Clapton, when he's playing in a, 4 or 5 piece, he's playing Strats and Tellys. When he got to a 3-piece, he went to Gibson. And I think that's, and then when he got back into bands later, and when he, from Derek and the Dominoes, and then he started playing Fenders again, didn't he? He started playing Strats.
That's correct.
I think there's a correlation there, isn't there, between what type of band he was in and how much volume of he had to fill with a guitar. So obviously in a 3-piece, a Gibson gives you a thicker, bigger sound. Therefore, you go with that. The interesting thing I think with
Carl?
Hendrix.
Are you there,
Still
Carl?
can't hear you, Carl. Can you hear him? Can you hear him, Andrew? No, I can't hear him either.
You'll have to jump back out and jump back in, buddy. I'll kick him out. Remove from the stream.
Yes, remove him summarily.
You carry on talking, Simon, and I'll just
no, that's fine. That's
him if that's okay.
That's okay. So I think that with Hendrix, that he comes to him, you get Marshalls, and you discover with a Marshall you could turn it up, turn it up very loud. So obviously you've got that volume, but also, and I think it's crucial. The fuzz pedal thickens that sound, doesn't it? It gives you an extra thickness on the. Kubrick lover, how you doing? Good morning. Yes, Andrew is safe. He's not on a small island, which has just erupted. Fortunately, he lives on the mainland.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. Dark days here. Sad day for a few people, for a few internationals. It's not just only Kiwis. Have we got?
Did you see the? Sorry, wait. I'm tangenting.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Great. Awesome.
My mum called. If someone calls, it might all your guys
the audio goes
down and then you can't hear me.
Yeah.
Just don't take any calls.
Well, no, I rejected it, but it just wipes out the signal.
Oh,
he's rejected his own mother. There we are. Heard it first here.
We were just talking about what we were talking about. We were just talking.
We're talking about the sound. We're talking about before the volcano thing. As Kubrick lover very rightly brings up the volcano. Did you see China Mike's thing about the volcano yesterday? You know who China Mike is? China guitar skeptic. Well, he's an English guy on YouTube, but he went there about a year ago. He's got a friend who lives nearby. Yeah, and he's got he was showing. If you want to watch it, it's quite good. He's got a load of he took a load of film of him on the island, and he was kind of giving it some background and things about the volcano and things. He went up. He had some film of a helicopter going round inside the rim of the volcano and stuff. Well, it just shows, you can't mess with nature, can you? That's a live volcano. At some point, it's going to go bang.
Well, I think all through New Zealand there's what they call dormant volcanoes, and dormant means sleeping.
Anytime, but that's not a dormant volcano. Because he was saying that
what island alive?
Yeah. We were saying that Mike was saying that you had to be careful where you walk because the crust would bubble up and it would expel hot gases and stuff and things like that, which is
scary.
I'm like, well, yeah, and that's quite live in my books. That's not dormant. That's not the definition of dormant that I know. But but yeah, so it's worth a look for 5 minutes of because obviously he'd been there and he's wearing a kit and he'd wandered around inside the volcano stuff and and he showed some other shots of it erupting comparatively recently as well. I think it does let off plumes, and apparently this is like a minor eruption, just blowing off the top layer kind of thing. I don't want to make light of it because obviously people have died in this, and that's terrible, But he did say they had to sign kind of forms to say we understand that there is a risk to our our health and our life doing this. He did show one of the shots of with where there was the helicopter lying on its side in the crater. So I presume that'll be. So somebody got blasted, I'm afraid, which is terrible.
Horrible.
Yeah.
No.
But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. But I was thinking, getting back to the Hendrix, especially in England. So if Eric was to roll up on stage at that particular time, late '66. The start of Cream, his signature song may have been "Stepping Out" or maybe "Hideaway" or something, a showcase. Jimmy Page had, he had what happening 10 years ago, or maybe the early incarnation of Dazed and Confused with Yardbirds. That was his showstopper.
Yeah.
Jeff Beck would have had Beck's Barola or Jeff's Blues. Pete Townsend would have done, a few windmills and broken a guitar. But Hendrix rolling up doing that Killing Floor basically cleared the floor and killed the floor. I mean,
what's really interesting about that,
thing, isn't it?
What's that?
Well, what's interesting about that song, though, it's a blues song he picked too. You can't argue that. It wasn't, it wasn't a rock and roll song. It wasn't a Chuck Berry song. It was, it was a blues song.
Sure.
Sorry, Simon. Sorry, Simon, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I was going to make a very similar point, really, that that it was a blues song, but the way Hendrix attacked it is different to the way they would have attacked it.
Yeah,
that difference of kind of probably, being inside it a bit more kind of thing. I don't know whether he played with Howling Wolf, but it's entirely possible he would have seen him.
Well, amongst the showmanship and the great singing and the antics and the the stage maneuvers, we a lot of people forget, we don't because we're musicians, how amazing he was at rhythm guitar.
Yes,
some people said
that's an interesting point.
Yeah, it sounds like two guitars almost, even though it's not two guitars. It's rhythm and a kind of a lead simultaneously.
Yeah, together, that kind of rhythm and lead together. Yeah, that's really interesting. The other thing I'd say about Hendrix musically is, and one of the few things, I don't know if I still got it somewhere, but one of the few things I remember getting when I was a kid was a Hendrix tab book. and it had like amazing chords in it, chords that I never really heard of before,
Yeah.
or indeed since. But you know, I think that he took that level. It wasn't just, you know, A major, D major, E major. It was, you know, the B minor sevenths
And
and
we
the
heard that for the first time on
sus
Purple
ninths.
Haze. On
Yeah,
Purple Haze,
that's right.
the
Yeah,
first time. That E7-9.
that's the one, the E7-9 chord, which
Not the E7, but the E7-9.
and that's the point, isn't it? The E7-9. You see that, and you know, when I'm starting, and I'm starting in the early 70s. That was a pretty exotic set of chords. Those chords that he played in, you know, lots of those songs. I think much more exotic than, you know, than lots of bands were playing. I think, you know, I think it's I think even more exotic. I don't think, you know, even Clapton, they were pretty much, you know, major chords and, you know, a bit of
But
sevenths
he
and
would have,
stuff. And
well,
but
Eric Clapton played that E6-9 on the Freddie King Hideaway. I'd like to show you, but I've got a piece of chicken.
can't you get a tune out of that chicken leg? Hendrix would have done. I got a piece of chicken.
But
oh dear.
but getting back to that Chitlin circuit and Curtis Mayfield and the Isley Brothers and a lot of these clever guitar players, Hendrix wouldn't have stolen it, but he would have borrowed it permanently.
Oh well, yeah. Yes, completely. You know,
because they're R&B chords and jazz chords.
yes, yeah, jazz chords, but particularly jazz chords. I think, you know, there's that. You know, I think that's the point. There's a lot more jazz in Jimi Hendrix than maybe in Clapton and Beck at that stage. I think certainly, although Beck did go on and do jazz stuff, didn't he, in the 70s? But yeah, and certainly Jimmy Page. You know, I think Jimmy Page was on a slightly different route, but a bit more English folk kind of thing, open tunings and that sort of thing, which gives you a particular sound, but is not necessarily that jazz chord.
Castle's made of sand.
Yeah.
No, you know, no one's heard that before. Not only these crazy chords, but sliding them up and down.
Yeah, and playing the lead licks in between, and you know,
octaves.
Not all. Yeah, that's right. And playing those lead licks in between those things, and obviously, in, you know, with 66, we're talking, it's pretty revolutionary, isn't it? I mean, you know,
it's amazing.
Amazing. I just want to, while you were not taking a call from your mother, we were talking about the fact that the Hendrix sound, and the fact that we've talked before with Eric Clapton, particularly, that saying that when he was in the Yardbirds and stuff with another guitar player, he played Tellys and stuff, you know, Fenders, and then when he got into a 3-piece, he went to Gibsons, you know, because of that thicker, bigger sound kind of thing with the humbuckers. And then when he went back to playing in, you know, Blind Faith and other things, you know, he went back to gradually went back to Fender kind of thing. And we were saying it's interesting that he didn't. Kubrick Lover, he did. Obviously, it was a classic, you know, being able to do the two things together. But that, you know, that Hendrix went for the Strat, traditionally a much cleaner, you know,
and I think
in a 3-piece, interestingly, whereas nobody else was doing that. None of the British guys were doing that. They all had, you know, they were following Eric's, you know, and all that buying Les Pauls, wasn't it? You know, everybody rushed out and bought a Les Paul after.
Hendrix could play anything, but where the tone controls were having the whammy bar.
Yeah.
And to offset the humbucker at volume 5 on the Fender amp, he just said, "Oh, well, just turn the Marshall up to 10 and get 4 stacks." That might make up for a humbucker.
Well, but also, I think the thing that really made up for it was the fuzz pedal, because as soon as you play with a fuzz pedal, that really, you know, I mean, that's part of what the fuzz pedal does. Is it, you know, it can give you that kind of that thickened sound, doesn't it? You know, which
gives you that thick sound.
If you crank the Marshall,
and
you have that thickened sound, then you start to get something that approaches, you know. And I'm aware that that
some good
Hendrix did
sustain
play
too.
Gibsons, didn't he? He played a flying V for sure, didn't he? He must have played Gibsons and stuff. So I don't. He probably wasn't that exclusive about it. But we think of him as being the great Strat player, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
The king of the Stratocaster.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
quite rightly.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just like when I think of Jimmy Page, I don't think of Jimmy Page with a Telecaster. I think of him with a Les Paul.
It's funny that, isn't it? But as soon as do you not find, I was listening to some Led Zeppelin the other day, and you think to yourself, as soon as you hear it, the early stuff, the first two albums, as soon as you hear them, you go, that's a telly.
Yeah.
You don't say, it's that when and you listen to them. I was listening to something in the car the other day, so not kind of hi-fi, but even then you go, well, that's a telly, isn't it?
Yep.
It just is. It's not Les Paul. So all those best, those fantastic first two Led Zeppelin records made with a telly.
I still can't believe it to this day. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the brilliance of Jimmy Page being as a producer and as a,
Speaking of guitars, and obviously we know that. Well, I'll mention one more thing before I mention this point. With a lot of those rock guitar players, obviously to fill that sound, they use the Les Pauls with the humbuckers, but it gave Richie Blackmore the confidence to remain a Strat guy in Deep Purple and being the only guitar player because he was a Hendrix fan. So he went left instead of going right with most of these other guys. Most of the guys that went right all got Les Pauls and SGs and Firebirds Explorers.
Yeah. I'd say that Deep Purple, the other reason that he could do that in Deep Purple is John Lord. Yeah. Because that organ sound, because he used to put that organ through Marshalls, didn't he, John Lord? That's what he used to do. Obviously, what you get is the combination a lot, and they used it a lot. The combination of, Richie Blackmore playing a Strat, and I've certainly read this that, things like the classic a bit later, but Smoke on the Water and stuff like that. He's playing through a Vox. He's not playing through a Marshalls. He's playing through a Vox for recording purposes.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the key is with Richie Blackmore is that he used the tone control too. He's on record saying that a lot of guys when they use a Strat just use the volume, but he uses the tone, which I never use on a Strat.
I do a bit. I sort of wind off sometimes, but I do think it's interesting with Richie Blackmore that because you've got that and you can hear it. So if you listen to them, you can hear Blackmore and Lord playing the same things, and you've got the two things together. That organ, chords, and Blackmore, is amazing. Produces an amazingly kind of big, heavy sound.
Yeah.
I couldn't care for the heavy bit because heavy metal, Deep Purple, no way Deep Purple heavy metal of any description at all. They're just a rock and roll band, but don't get me started on that.
And all you guys research, did Hendrix have a main guitar, like a go-to favorite, or he had various?
No. So the limited research and a couple of books that I've read, he played Stratocasters. He didn't, he had the white famous one, at Woodstock, and early on he was using Strats with rosewood necks, and then went to maples, and then he was playing them with the CBS heads, He didn't have like his favorite. He didn't have a Blackie or a number one. No.
What's interesting about that is that, and we kind of, in our days of guitar snobbery and stuff, is we forget that he played the CBS era Strats.
What's wrong with that?
60s. He wasn't. No, precisely. That's my point. Exactly.
Yeah.
In that world, there's the
57 and the
pre CBS Strats, and they're all fantastic, and then you get CBS, and they're all rubbish, and that's the kind of he did Kubrick Lover. He did play a Flying V.
Yeah, and on a Scandinavian tour.
Yeah, certainly later on, he was obviously expanding his sound, and
Yeah.
And to answer Kubrick's question, Andrew and I live in the same place, Hamilton, which is inland, so quite far away from the volcano, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's interestingly. You see, this is just talking about his gear and stuff. You're right. I mean, basically, the other thing he did is he played right-handed guitars, turned them upside down, restrung them, but also he turned the nut round as well.
Yeah.
You take the nut out and turn it around and put it back in again.
But he's also on.
If you restring it the other way, then obviously the
Did
top
he have
string
Did he have a number one guitar tech guy, or did he work himself?
No.
I think he didn't. No, not seemingly. It's
No, most of those guys early on were doing their own stuff, Carl. That they didn't have techs. But what's really interesting about the Strat though, I can't remember. Maybe you guys might be able to tell me. Is this something that he said in an interview? He's talking about the Stratocaster and the way that he plays it, and the bridge pickup, the way that it's slanted on a right-hand guitar, the way that he plays it, because he's playing it left-hand, gave him a certain sound, an attack that he liked, as opposed to playing a left-handed guitar, which he didn't like. He didn't like the way that it sounded. He liked the right-handed guitar. Yeah. So yeah, obviously we have to take him at his word on that, don't we?
And
yeah,
was
completely,
it something to do with the where the whammy bar was placed and the tone controls for his tricks?
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah, well, yeah. Well, maybe it just became second nature to him too. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, is that you've got not only the controls and something at the top, but also you've got the whammy bar at the top as well, haven't you? You've got it here. So I can't do left-handed, but but that must be. I don't know. Did it possibly? It's,
I don't know if he had a guy that modded pedals. Wasn't he just a guy that was building pedals, guys? Arvin's asking, didn't Jimmy have a guy who modded pedals for him?
That's interesting. See, he'd heard one of his signatures, it was the wah-wah pedal that he'd heard on Cream's Tales of Brave Ulysses.
Yes.
Obviously that thing, and
Vox wah-wahs are legendary, and when we think of wah-wah, obviously Tales of Brave Ulysses in White Room, but I think Hendrix took the wah-wah to another level, hence Voodoo Child, right?
Arvin's talking about a man called Roger Mayer, who he enjoyed a long collaboration, and Roger Mayer would modify things, experimenting with other guitar effects. Mayer introduced him to the Octava, an octave doubling effects pedal, and he also has a Univibe.
Ibanez Tube Screamer TS9 come out?
No, that wasn't until the 70s. That was
that's
way
much
after.
later. Yeah, that's way after. He didn't have any use of any of that. But,
no, the volume was the Tube Screamer back then on the amp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Interestingly, just on the amps thing, that he in America he'd been using an 85-watt Fender Twin reverb, so that's what he used in America. And when he came to England, Chaz Chandler bought him a 30-watt Burns amp, which is a British company. They also make guitars, Burns guitars, a bit like Fenderish Burns guitars, but he thought they were a bit small, so he. And after an early London gig, he was unable to use his preferred Fender Twin. So his preferred Fender Twin, he asked about the Marshall amps, and he got introduced to Jim Marshall, and he bought 300-watt super lead amps and some cabs, turned them up, and and then kind of history.
He went from 30-watt to 300-watt.
Huh?
Did you say
300? Sorry, no, 300-watt amps. Sorry, yeah.
And they were daisy chained, Simon, so they were going simultaneously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all turned up wildly. And,
wow.
And they, because then he obviously turn them up. You get that Marshall amp saying it's sort of super Fender Bassman, but you've cranked it because it's 100-watt, and it's amazing. Well, I think, probably, I think that's probably true. That he didn't use a huge amount, did he? We've pretty much just described his setup and kind of thing.
Well, Hendrix, as we as guitar players, it's something I've learnt. I wish I could do it better. I used to do it pretty well, but Hendrix did a lot of hand palm muting and glissing and glossing with the pick and all that
Going back.
all
back
that
here as well.
stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was all in there, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't, no stone unturned in his quest to make new sounds with the guitar. I mean,
And he'd play the root notes if you watch closely with his thumb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of key things
Thumb
that
over
you
the
need
top.
to do if you want to sound like Hendrix, and that first one though is certainly if you hit that G chord, that G note, and then you're playing your pentatonics, but also being half a step down, because for years when I was doing some Hendrix riffs, I could never nail it until I realized you had to tune half a step down, and that certainly makes a difference if you're a bedroom tone chaser.
Tuned half a step down, did he? Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a big influence on Stevie Ray Vaughan, that half step.
Big time.
Yeah, but so I think that obviously, as I said earlier, coming to England, meeting Jim Marshall, not being so much Fender stuff, it's that's right. Yeah. Took it to the toilet, Kubrick lover.
Being the accountant that followed the tour, and then Jimmy says, "How much do we make for the show?" "Oh, about $1,400, but it's $1,600 worth of damage."
Well, I don't think he broke guitars up very much. Interestingly, he apparently purchased between 50 and 100 Marshall amps in his lifetime in 4 years.
Because I've seen stuff where
a lot of them got stolen too. Groupies, not groupies, roadies. Roadies wouldn't turn up with like there might be like 4 stacks or something like that, and only 2 stacks will be turn up for the gig.
Been
so
returned. Yeah.
So
I just had that image of skinny young girls legging it down the road with a 412 on their back. It doesn't really fit. Get 4 yards ago.
The reason why I've got groupies in my mind is because
steady now, Andrew, steady.
Kubrick lovers quote. Apparently, Jimi Hendrix would kick groupies out of his bed if they went to remove the guitars, because he always used to have guitars in his bed. So if any of the groupies would move the guitar, because he had to have the guitar there, they'd be kicked out. Apparently,
see my whammy bar, baby.
That takes threesome to another level, doesn't it?
Careful now. What's just you, me, and a guitar? That's a country. That must be a country song, wasn't it? He left me for his guitar. That must be a country song. I can't believe it's not.
So the girl rolls up expecting another girl to be there, and he says, "This is my lady here, and it's a strap."
It's taken a dark turn, this podcast. But just there's a couple of things. The that I read that the lighter fuel thing. Yeah, the lighter fuel thing came about because they went on. He played some gigs with the Who, and Keith Altham, the PR guy, Altham, Altham. He said to them, "You need to, because obviously Pete would smash his guitar up and kind of thing." So he said, "You need to have a gimmick. You need to have a trick, something to do." And so they came up with this, what can we do? And I think, I know, we'll set light to it, So they sent a roadie out to get some lighter fuel. And that's where it came from. It came to trying to upstage, or not upstage, but keep up with the Who. Have as much of a stage show as the Who.
Wow.
So who did Jimmy burn his guitar? He was at Monterey and he burnt his guitar. Who came on after Jimmy on that gig that was upset? I can't remember.
Was somebody dead upset about it? Was it?
Yes.
Otis Redding, was it? Was he dead upset about it?
Yeah. Because obviously people had gone nuts.
Yeah.
And then when people go nuts and something else comes on,
Well, can you imagine? I mean, I'm just trying to paint a picture of just an ultra boring routine of a life. Every Saturday you're at a bar and you see some white guys with normal haircuts and just do a normal gig. Can you imagine in 1966 in a white bar, a black guy rolls up with an afro, flowers on his guitar, blows the place apart with his music, then burns the place down. A little bit different, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
I've never heard of this Kubrick lover of Hendrix cutting his forehead open.
Neither have I.
No,
I've never heard that. No, that must be an urban legend. I think there's a. Could I just give you a flavour of how fast kind of Hendrix, sort of took off, kind of thing. So he arrives in October '66. Plays around a bit, gets signed to Track Records. Which is the Who's, Kit Lambert and Chris Stubbs label. Makes the first album. Puts it out in the sort of early '67, and then they go on tour. And they go on tour around to playing hotels in the UK. And you might have heard of it, Ilkley in Yorkshire. There's a spa town called Ilkley in Yorkshire. It's not a very big town. And he turned up to play at this 250, capacity hotel, and 900 people turned up. The police had to stop it because it was so, due to safety concerns. But it talk about one of those funny things where, you suddenly get big, but you've got a kind of legacy. I booked this tour 3 months ago when nobody had heard of you, and now you've had Purple Haze and The Wind Cries Mary, and you've got a hit record out. When all of a sudden you should be in the local theatre, not in the. I mean, Ilkley's a small town, in Yorkshire. It's not, it's not really on the beaten track of the circuit, if you like.
So what's really interesting about
Hey Joe?
Sorry, say that again, Carl.
What was the story behind Hey Joe?
What do you mean in terms of what?
Obviously, that was his first big hit, and I guess the signature was he played the solo with his teeth. But an unlikely song like the Rolling Stones do and Come On.
Well,
an unlikely song for someone like that.
But it's written by Tim Rose, isn't it? Tim Rose, who's like a folk player.
Folk song.
Yeah.
Folk song. So, but if you think about Tim Rose, is in the Bob Dylan camp, if you like. Of Hendrix has a history. He did a lot some Bob Dylan.
Watchtower.
And he probably would. If he's playing around Greenwich Village, in '65, the Cafe War and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure he would have seen it. Seen Tim Rose doing it, and and probably picked it up from there. And as we've seen, not afraid to do a cover version is our Jimmy. His live shows and littered. And that famous one on the Lulu show where they start off, playing I don't know Purple Haze or something. And he stops after he goes, "No, we're going to stop playing this stuff now. This is a song," because I think Cream had just broken up. He's like, "This is a song for my good friends Cream," and they bash into "Sunshine of Your Love" famously, fantastically.
So is it true? He's playing somewhere in London. The Beatles have just released Sgt. Pepper's on the Monday. The gig's on the Thursday. He's listened to Sgt. Pepper's a couple of times. He tells Chaz that he's going to do a cover version, and Chaz begs him and says, "The Beatles are in the friggin' audience, man. The album's just been released. Don't do it." And he said, "But I want to give it to the Beatles. This is me." So is that true, or was that an urban?
No, he did. June the 4th, '67. Hendrix opened a show at the Savile Theatre in. So May the 12th. Was it? Oh, it was. No, hang on. The preliminary talk by Sgt. Pepper's. So on June the 4th, he opened a show at the Savile Row Theatre with his track, which was released just 3 days previously.
3
Beatles
days
manager
before. Wow.
Brian Epstein owned the Savile Theatre at the time. Both George Harrison and Paul McCartney attended the performance. The curtains flew back and he came walking forward playing Sgt. Pepper. It's a pretty major compliment in anyone's book. I put that down as one of the great honours of my career. So yeah, absolutely, yeah. 3 days, learnt it, and played it in front of Paul McCartney and George Harrison. Hats off to him.
Wow. Wow.
You know, I think you kind of.
Wow.
It's really difficult these days to get to have that kind of understand the impact of that, isn't it? I mean, these days, you know that because I think that anybody wouldn't have had I can't think of anybody else who'd have had the cheek and the nerve and to be able to 3 days after an album comes out. It's there's that Hendrix with the Sgt. Pepper cover. I hear it's not the greatest movie because I don't think it covers his music for the experience. We don't know about that movie. You're not. I mean, the first album I've showed this earlier, but you weren't in. But the first album I bought was this one, which is the soundtrack from the film, which has got quite a lot of his, Hey Joe, Red House, Purple Haze, Johnny Be Good, Like a Rolling Stone, Star Spangled Banner, Rock Me, Wild Thing. Well, it's Wild Thing, you see. Machine Gun, Infinite Storm, Hear My Train Coming, and Machine Gun with Band of Gypsies.
Wow.
That's the film I've seen. Probably not that one.
Went to England. Obviously, you mentioned before, Simon, that he cut that album pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I think they all did.
Did he write those famous songs in England, or they were little babies that were blooming already in America, and he just kind of finished them off in England? The Purple Haze,
good point.
Foxy Lady, Manic Depression. The first album was mainly all hits.
Yeah, and I think that he came up with them in the UK. I don't think there were things he'd had kicking around particularly. It's possible, but I mean, it says here Chas Chandler heard Hendrix toying around with a new guitar riff. This is in London. Heard him playing at the flat and was knocked out. Told him to keep working on it, saying that's the next single. Chandler claimed that submerging. Hendrix wrote the rest of Purple Haze in a dressing room in a London club during the afternoon, December the 26th, 66.
Wow.
So I think that you see, it's possible that and it's not clear, but that he might have had those riffs as an idea. Do you see what I mean? It's a bit like that. I've got a riff. Down, 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 down. That kind of. Down, 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 down. And you just kind of play it as a kind of thing. It takes. It's a bit like Jagger and Richards, being locked in the kitchen. Don't come out until you've got a song, And it sounds to me like Chas, he's the one you doing the producer's job, and turning up and going, "That is brilliant, right? Make that into a song," So
we know
and it's that urging.
Hendrix had like a bag of tricks or tricks up his sleeve, or a lot of stuff he would kind of reuse or rework. So a lot of those lyrics would have been adapted to riffs and licks, like you said, he'd probably been working on for a while.
Yeah. No, I completely. And he must. And I can't. It's possible that he came up with them all on the, on the fly. But I would suggest that he had those riffs and things around, and Chas Chandler hassled him into making them songs.
Why not?
Doing what a good producer would do, which is to go, And my guess is that it's difficult to. I don't know, but you'd think if he wasn't playing some of those songs live, what was he playing? Was he just doing all covers?
Simon, I want to ask you this question: how important is Noel and Mitch in that process of drawing out those songs? If Jimmy had a riff, and you've mentioned Chas's responsibility there as a manager, so how important was Noel and Mitch and getting that out. Surely they must have had a role to play.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, obviously Hendrix is the sole composer of all these things. So, he didn't, they obviously didn't get a writing credit. So my guess is that he bought the songs to them, because I think they were very much hired hands, weren't they? Chaz hired them to back him. I don't think it's not, and that's not like Eric, Ginger, and Jack getting together and forming Cream, is it? There's a difference there. In a sense, what Chaz needed was some musicians to complement Jimmy. Now, if you've got a wild afro, that's going to be a visual complement. And then you've got, how you play, and that kind of quite free form, jamming kind of thing. Now they obviously would have, he would have bought the stuff. I don't know whether I don't think he wouldn't certainly have had anything to do with the drums. I don't think he would have written a bass part, although I'm sure he could have done, if you sort of mean. That he. So I think there's a line in all of that, isn't there? About and all bands have this as a problem, that that where the creativity, where the line is between what I added and what I didn't. My feeling is that probably they added less to them. Obviously they played in their style, and that style, was part of making those records great. And I don't want to take away from their, what they do, what they did, and what they, because I think, somebody else would have made a very different record. That kind of very kind of Mitch Mitchell's kind of very kind of, round the kit, freeform jazz, drumming type of thing, and Noel Redding's, bass playing. It does make those songs. You can't deny that in sound terms and in style terms, it suited what Hendrix was doing. But
I think they were a perfect match to his sound.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think
Chaz chose wisely.
That rhythm section was super tight. You mentioned Mitch Mitchell being a great jazz drummer. He was phenomenal. Noel Redding was a great guitar player that switched to bass.
Guitar player, yeah.
Switched to bass. And we'll talk about this a bit later. We can talk about it now. But Hendrix did it reluctantly, but he felt a brotherhood movement back in America, hence the Machine Gun and Billy Cox and Buddy Miles, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Buddy Miles. Yeah.
He had a lot of black leaders saying, hey, right on, brother. What are you doing, brother? You need to check the movement, the pro black, So you got the black rhythm section, and then later on, I think Mitch came back and Noel left. Is that right?
Yeah.
Billy Cox was the bass player.
Yeah. Band of
But
Gypsies.
just going through the albums real quick. So the first album obviously was a lot of hits, great music. The sound production was pretty average. I've got to say that. But it did have certain things, didn't it? The first time, it had like backwards guitars and backwards drums, and in a sense, then the sort of latest production technique. So it's does its stuff kind of thing. Axis Boulder's Love. He must have obviously had a bit more time up his sleeve, a better studio, and the sound production on that was amazing. That gave us our first little taste of Little Wing, didn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. But if you think about it, the
Spanish Castle Magic. Yeah. And his songwriting got a bit more clever. His guitar playing got a bit more clever. You could see a lot of the rhythm and the R&B coming through, and obviously the psychedelia. He was having a lot of fun, wasn't
he? Let's hope so.
And they got the album cover wrong. He said to the creative director, he says, I'm part Irish, part black, and part Indian. And the creative director, the artist, thought,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the Cherokee Indian was not there, but the guy from Bombay was. Or Mumbai.
Yeah, it's a various avatars of Vishnu. Yeah, Vishnu. So yes, that's right. You see, you got it wrong. I'm not that kind of Indian. Yeah, I'm a Native American Indian, not somebody from India. Oh, that's quite funny actually. Well, yeah.
But having said that, though, it sort of
That's
fits
what it
into that whole Indian mysticism that the Beatles were at the forefront of, with the
Exploring.
Maharishi and transcendental meditation. So, if you're a 16, 17, 18 or 19-year-old buying records during that time, yeah, it fits in.
It's a great cover. It's a great cover. Colourful. And then moving on, Electric Ladyland. Electric Ladyland, pockets of brilliance, but you can see some of it start to wane a bit.
But there's also that, for me, just for the sake of scurrilousness, let's show the cover again. Just to cheer you up, blind you in the. But don't you think that's the beginning of his serious experimentations phase? Where he did a lot of jamming. Him and Eddie Kramer were together. They did a lot of jamming. Just get people come back jam. And then kind of bit more. Put stuff together that they had, and kind of I hear a lot more experimentation on that album. The first album is bit of production, but is a pretty straight songs record. Axis Boulder Love, a bit more, but still fairly straight songs. And then you get to Electric Ladyland, which is much more experimental. He's experimenting with soundscapes and also different ways of and obviously getting more experience in the studio. Yeah.
But still cohesive, Simon.
Crosstown Traffic, Voodoo Child, Burning of the Midnight Lamp. So we've still got some great.
Wow.
Yes, it is. Yeah, All on the Watchtower and Voodoo's Last Night Return. So there's kind of those songs, and then there's things like And God's Made Love, Electric Ladyland, Moon, Turn the Tides Gently, Gently Away. A Merman I Should Turn to Be, which is something that Kubrick lovers brought up. You Can Hear a Riff in 1983, Turn to Be off the Electric Ladyland. You can hear the main riff by a song called Lenny Kravitz. Really? Oh, right. I'll check that out. Sorry. Arvin, no, I can't hold it up for the rest of the show. You have to go back and freeze it. I have shown it twice. That's probably enough. We're not that kind of show. Anyway,
kid friendly.
It's still friendly. He's about, even though you've got all that experimentation. Yeah. And I think what we need to talk about, though, is that certainly there was some recreational drug use going on there, but early on in my development as a music listener, I was influenced by a lot of other people around me saying, that he was a big drug user. But actually, as you do a little bit more research, and you actually find out, yes, he participated, but nowhere near as much as the myth that's out there that he was this walking drugged out zombie.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't. And then when you compare that 4-year period with the amount of music that he's done over that period of time, well, jeepers, it's amazing he had time to have groupies.
Yeah. Well, they worked really hard, didn't they? As a kind of, as a band, they were touring constantly, and I know that's kind of, because that's what you did then. Can I just say that this is a great story? This is about Axis Boulder's Love. Hendrix lost the master tapes on side 1 of the album because he left them in the backseat of a London taxi.
Yes.
So with the deadline looming, him and Eddie Kramer and Chaz Chandler, they remixed all of side 1, or most of side 1, in one night.
Yeah, try.
But they couldn't get it. They couldn't match the quality of the lost mix of If 6 Were 9. But bassist Noel Redding had a recording of the mix, which was smoothed out with an iron.
That's right.
Press it out, be all right, and yes, that's it. That's really funny. Yeah, the old days of it. It's a bit creased. Don't worry, we'll iron it. Don't make the iron too hot.
Apparently, that episode, Simon and Carl, was what was the catalyst for a lot of artists now not they weren't allowed to take the tapes home. That they were very, very concerned about you taking them home, Simon, on a Friday night, because we don't know what you're going to be doing on your way home, Simon.
I just stopped
and
off
we've
at
paid you
15 clubs,
$350,000, Simon.
350 sobs. Oh dear.
I think with that Electric Ladyland, we started to get a little bit of a taste of the hanger-oners in the studio. More and more hours to cut tracks, starting to get not lazy, but that energy disappeared a fraction, I think. And then obviously, I would say it was a bit of a dark period, I think. Because, like you mentioned, he wasn't a big drug taker, but he definitely got his drinks spiked before shows.
Yeah,
there was a lot of people taking advantage
that
of
happened
it.
a lot, didn't it? Certainly, Woodstock, everyone was just spiked. The water was just spiked, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was Brian Jones was, I think, caught amongst that too. Just the whole acid experience and.
One of the interesting strikes me is that the first Bax's Polders Love and Jimi Hendrix, they were recorded in London, and then but for Electric Ladyland he moved to New York. Didn't he? It was recorded in New York, the record plant in New York, with Eddie Kramer, an American,
which turned out to be a very famous studio, still going. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Bruce Springsteen recorded "Born to Run" at the record plant.
Because didn't Eddie Kramer was he a bit of a rogue, or took some money, or kept a lot of secrets with him to his grave? He died a couple of years later, didn't he?
Kramer? No. He's still alive, Eddie Kramer.
Or someone in Hendrix Circle died in a helicopter crash or a plane crash a bit later on.
Yeah, see, he's 77 years old, Eddie Kramer, but he's not. But he's still alive, well alive.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
someone mixed up with Hendrix who was who didn't do him right and died, but obviously I guess a big high watermark was Woodstock.
Oh, big time.
Of course, yeah.
So that's also everything came together.
Was Woodstock his kind of return to America? Or was that Monterey? Monterey was his great, return. Yeah. That's right, with Otis Redding.
But he was a bit like Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley wanted to be taken serious as an actor. Jimi Hendrix wanted to be taken serious as a songwriter.
Yeah.
So he actually resented the monkey circus act and the playing the Hey Joe and Foxy Lady.
Yeah.
But that last album was his vision. Was the last album of what he wanted to do in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which is laid back melodies, Angel, a beautiful blend of rock, R&B, jazz, just groovy, I guess.
Yeah, completely.
I think what we have to sort of remember if we're talking about Woodstock, that whole that whole gig there, like I can't say it's a fact or not because I can't remember, but I always got told that they told him that he didn't need to play. He was certainly the highest paid. No, he was going to play earlier, wasn't he, in the evening, but something happened, and so they said he could play on the. Oh, was it the rain? There was something. Maybe you guys can help.
Was it the rain? Yeah.
Because the crowd dwindled, didn't it?
That's correct. And so he played like 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning after the storm, and did his set, but pissed off a few people because he played the Star Spangled Banner. That's really interesting. But the people that were pissed off weren't the conservatives; they were the hippies. They were the the anti-war kind of
Wow.
guys. You know, they were a little bit
Right.
upset that he'd played, you know, the Star Spangled Banner, because, you know, that's a sign of
Ah.
patriotism. Interesting, isn't it?
But yeah, definitely it was the weather. Basically, technical and weather delays caused the festival Woodstock to stretch into Monday morning. The
Okay.
organisers had given
Wow.
Hendrix the opportunity to go on at midnight, but he opted to be the closer. So he did not. The crowd, as you say, the crowd, a lot of them gone home. 500,000 dwindled down to 200,000. Only 200,000.
Wow.
But here we are.
Maybe the Star Spangled Banner coincided with the fact that he'd been in the army.
Well,
Oh.
it was a protest. I mean, him playing the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock was a Vietnam protesting, wasn't it? I mean, it's basically if you like, not mangling, but making the Star Spangled Banner with all that feedback and, you know, and it elongated, and that was saying, you know, America is mangled by mangling the Star Spangled Banner. You know, as a sort of a metaphor for. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's what he was doing. As a metaphor for you know, broken, destructed America, was breaking the Star Spangled Banner. You know, not playing it clean, but playing it in the way that he did. And if you think about it as like that, it has amazing resonance. You know, even now it resonates. That version, you know, is the thing.
Oh,
Can
wow.
I just say, there's a couple of things here that will. So basically, at Woodstock, Hendrix performed with a temporary band. Right, so he had Billy Cox and drummer Mitch Mitchell. He also had a second guitarist, Larry Lee. He played on it, and Larry Lee backed Hendrix on some songs. He also sang lead on 2 songs and played lead guitar on stuff as well. It's like,
Wow.
I don't have like, blimey, imagine that. It's like, yeah, you can have a go. Why not? Help fill your boots, you know. Well, who is Larry Lee? Nobody knows. But, you know, yeah. Well, another thing about Woodstock that you know, you kind of forget. But yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, it's the first time he had to see.
I suppose the good thing about Jimi Hendrix being at Woodstock, having the opportunity to play the Star Spangled Banner, it's at least the people sitting there listening to him were probably glad that he wasn't singing the Internationale or something like that. You know,
yeah.
You know, because they wouldn't be experiencing that situation if they were in the USSR or communist China. So yeah. All good for the Star Spangled Banner.
How about this? Apparently, he played Star Spangled Banner lots of times. He said there are 50 live recordings of Hendrix playing the National Anthem before Woodstock, or 28 before Woodstock. You know,
Wow.
so they range from like being a minute long to 6 minutes long. So, you know, it's kind of, and obviously it's the most iconic version. But he obviously played it a lot, and I think you're right, Carl, that you know, his background in the military. That the other thing was, and just imagine this, if you will, Hendrix was not supposed to close Woodstock. Steeped in childhood memories of the song, Woodstock organizer Michael Lang wanted, wait for it, Roy Rogers to come on after Hendrix and play Happy Trails.
Happy Trails. Yeah.
Can you imagine? Stunning. You'll be amazed to hear that Roy Rogers declined the opportunity to follow Hendrix. Oh, that's wonderful. That is. It's yeah, amazing kind of thing.
I read recently that one of the interesting situations about a lot of black guys, though, in America, are, you know, poor guys. If you weren't going to go to college, which a lot of them weren't, you know, they were going to get jobs, or the next best thing was to get a job or do something in the military, which is certainly what Jimi Hendrix did. But so it's true, he wasn't a paratrooper of rapport. He was a bad soldier, apparently. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. He always going, you know, yes, absolutely, yes, and always getting himself into trouble because he wouldn't turn up for, you know, for inspections and kind of, yes, not a great soldier by all accounts. My son didn't he get to? Did he get honourably? He received a medical discharge after breaking his ankle during his.
Yeah.
Yeah, during his
paratrooper training.
parachute jumping. Yeah. Yeah, his personal contact had begun to draw criticism from his superiors. They labelled him an unqualified marksman, and often caught him napping while on duty and failing to report to bed checks.
But he still
Did he
had the
play- he
courage
must
and the
have played
determination
guitar.
to play the Star Spangled Banner. Good on him.
Yeah, yeah.
And
his
the Band of Gypsies came out after Woodstock, is that right?
Oh yeah,
New
big
Year's
time.
Eve?
Yeah,
Well, I think
yeah.
Band of Dixies was the first time that he played with Billy Cox live.
Yeah.
And
And
that
then
was to
out of
fulfill
that-
a contractual obligation as a one-off album, is that right?
Badges. I don't know. I can't tell if it's a
Kubrick lovers got it on the comments here.
That's
So,
why Hendrix's old experience for Gypsy Son. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he introduced his new band at Woodstock. Yeah, that's right. Cool. Thank you for that.
so
Yes.
was that Band of Gypsies at Woodstock?
Yeah,
After
sort
the-
of. Yeah, but Billy
Sort
Cox.
of.
Billy Cox. Yeah, yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
But
That Band of Gypsies album, that Machine Gun Man, that's phenomenal. Oh,
it's a great record. Yeah.
oh,
The pinnacle of Hendrix's career. So I think that. In this performance, Jimmy transcended the meaning of rock music and set an entirely new stand for the potential of the electric guitar. Yes, I mean, so it created sounds with his guitar that sonically represented warfare, including rockets, bombs, and diving planes. The
Yeah.
advent of the dive bombing whammy bar, one would suggest.
The Dimebag Darrell, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, because that's actually quite in direct contrast to Hendrix with his fun and his Purple Haze and Foxy Lady and Smiling. The Band of Gypsies was very serious, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he didn't want to play the early stuff and things like that, the hits,
Yeah.
And I think, that's part of his restless creative spirit, isn't it? Looking to move on, not looking to play. And that's part of the zeitgeist of the times, isn't it? I mean, that period, 68, 69, 70, as we said before, is the advent of, the album growth. 71 is the first time the album actually, and all those things. But the album has become the art, the art form of the day.
Yep.
And people want to experiment. They want to push into that territory, see what they can do with it. The future's wide open, and you get on with it. And and I'm sure that people are like that restless creative spirit. I mean, two albums a year kind of thing. So pushing on. And obviously, things like the drugs would have helped. LSD and stuff like that. I'm sure they help with that doors of perception thing going on. And you're pushing into uncharted, in those days, uncharted creative territory. Hendrix, being in the pinnacle of that, you can see that you wouldn't necessarily want to go back and play Purple Haze much, because I think like a lot of performers, because he died so early, he probably hadn't worked out, because it's not really then that face facts, Jimmy, you're going to be playing Foxy Lady till you're 90, or whatever, and you've got to find a way of making your peace with that and being able to bring something creative, whenever you play it. I mean, Bob Dylan is the great example of, somebody who, has that massive body of work, famous songs, does he still have to play, Mr. Tambourine Man, some points? And the answer is, yeah, he does. And he does still play them, But, he's found a way of making peace with those songs and making, good or bad, I'm not making a value judgment about it, good or, of trying to play those songs in a way that still feels current to him, and gives him something, another sort of restless creative spirit, to do those things. So I can
Yeah,
see that in Hendrix, and I can see that's why, he wouldn't have, when he was doing Band of Gypsies and stuff like that, he didn't really want to go back. When they played live, didn't want to play new stuff, want to play,
Yeah.
as we said before, the weird thing about 1970s, bands would go out and tour albums before they were out. Pink
Yeah,
Floyd's tours Dark Side of the Moon, for like a year before they recorded it.
I don't think
Most
we
of it,
can
most of it.
discount that drug scene at that period of history too. We've mentioned it before that Jimi Hendrix wasn't the drug fiend. Obviously, that
Yes.
a lot of people may have thought that he was. But what's interesting though is that the LSD situation, you had the Beatles taking it, and they were representatives of pop music. You had Jimi Hendrix experimenting with it, obviously, and the Rolling Stones, who you could probably today classify as maybe the alternative spectrum of what the popular music scene was. Interesting how that recreational drug use had an impact right across the music scene. Didn't last too long. I suppose that's why they call it the psychedelic era. From
Yeah.
67 to what? How long did it go for? A year, 18 months? It certainly didn't go to 69, 70, did it? Yeah.
No, certainly by 1970, it wasn't the you're right. Psychedelia is 67, 68, isn't it? Really? Yeah, Summer of Love and that kind of thing. So I don't think it extends. It's not really 66 either.
By academics, Simon and Carl. You've got Leary, in the United States, a university professor backing it up, saying that it's great, and interesting.
Just to go back, Carl, you were trying to remember the name of the guy who died in a plane crash. His name was Mike Jeffrey, and he was Hendrix's manager. He was a bit more. I only need to read this phrase actually, and you'll understand why. He was an associate of noted English pop impresario Don Arden.
Oh no.
Yes, well, yes. Need I say more?
hide the money.
Yeah, hide the money. And I think yes, basically the animals. Jeffrey had been condemned by the Animals, who blamed him for breaking the band up, claiming he worked the group into the ground and appropriated most of their earnings. So surprisingly, he probably did the same with Hendrix as well. So I think there's in October 2006, a $15 million auction took place of items from Jeffrey's estate, including the rights to many of Jimi Hendrix's hits, including Purple Haze, etc.
Wow.
Amazing. So
he obviously.
I was going to say he died in 73 in a plane crash. You're right. Yeah. So not long after Hendrix died, really.
I've often wondered this: if Hendrix stayed alive, he would have most definitely kept releasing albums. Probably, I'd just love to know how his career would have continued. What would he have done? What were your thoughts?
Jazz.
Well, do you think he'd do jazz? Do you, Andrew? That's interesting. Yeah, I think he'd do. I think he'd continue to expand his music. I think jazz is a possibility. I think collaborations with people as well. Maybe forming bands with different people
world
as
music.
You go along.
Maybe developing a world music.
Yeah.
Because I think he wasn't too. And he obviously he liked. We all like money to keep us afloat, but he wasn't into money per se.
No. His family are today. They are.
Who's that?
His family are.
Oh wow.
They've got the rights to everything.
I've often wondered how his direction would go. What he would where he would have gone.
Yeah, almost anywhere. And, he could have, he could have returned to his blues roots. Kind of done.
Yeah.
I think I'm certainly think that at some point in his career he would have made more. Yes, Cooper at Lover, I agree. you're right. I think he would have done blues as well. So, yeah, well, yeah, yes. Poor old Sid did. He did lose his sanity, but I think he's in. Sorry, we're digressing, but in Sid Barrett's case, I think he had a delicate psyche to start with, and sadly, the LSD just didn't take much to hoof him over the edge, and that was enough for Roger Keith Sid Barrett. Sadly, so yeah. Arvin, I think you could say that about lots of bands. Arvin saying that he'd have them going halfway. Jeffrey, this is having going halfway across the states between gigs on tour, gigs way apart, and back the other way 2 days later. I think there's lots. I think lots of that used to go on. I mean, it's in a much smaller vein. Often bands in the UK, you'd have one night you'd be in Glasgow playing, and the next night you'd be in London playing, and the next night you'd be in Liverpool playing, and you'd be going up and down the Blooming like a sort of, can somebody organise it so that you go drive to Glasgow and then you gradually come down? But of course, that doesn't not way venues work, because so I mean, lots of pressure on him. I think and I think that if you've got a manager like Mike Jeffrey, perhaps you're not quite making the money you thought you were, kind of thing.
Yeah. I was crazy about the guy in my teen years. I read a lot of books, and a lot of it I've forgotten about. But he resented certain managers. He resented his hit songs. He didn't want to be the showman. He really wanted to be taken seriously.
As a guitarist, as an artist, yeah.
Yes,
completely, yeah. And I think that's and I think that's why I think that the jazz thing is a good call. That you could just imagine him playing with someone like Jaco Pastorius, or Stanley Clarke, or something. You can imagine him playing Miles Davis. Oh, well, there we are. You see, the Miles Davis. Oh, now we've invoked.
Because Miles was getting into Bitches Brew at the time, and
yeah.
Oh, so
yeah.
The other thing is
jazz rock stuff.
Is that Hendrix seems to transcend upon all generations, where even to this day, teenagers think he's cool. It's just Hendrix T-shirts and Hendrix posters and just the name.
And Hendrix being number one on guitar polls on social media. So I think, if you're 16 years old and you're on the guitarist website and they're doing the 4 guitar polls that they do in a year, and they have links, to like about 5 or 6 videos on YouTube, people are automatically social media does a good job in keeping his name out there.
Yeah. So since he's been gone, to this day, obviously there's going to be no one else ever like him, ever.
Yeah.
But you guys like Eddie Van Halen's, who else do you think has not necessarily come close, but has shown us a certain wizardry? You think?
Well, look, I don't think it's a matter. I don't think it's a wizardry thing, Carl. For me, the reason why Jimi Hendrix will always be in the top 3 for me, certainly, is that he took the guitar, and that was a new instrument, the electric guitar, in 1966-67. It was a new instrument in the sense that it was becoming an instrument in the hand of a rock god, of the guitar god. So in my opinion, he was breaking a lot of boundaries back then with the guitar. So
innovative.
Yeah. And so doing a comparison between him and Eddie Van Halen, I can't do it. There's nothing to compare. I'm
not comparing.
No, I don't think it's a comparison. I was just going to say that don't you think that Hendrix paved the way for Eddie Van Halen?
Oh,
I know Clapton. I know Clapton is one of Eddie Van Halen's favourite guitarists as well. But that kind of experimentation, that kind of taking the guitar, he must have taken something from Hendrix for that.
Oh, well, that's right. The guitar player in a band being a key integral person to the success of that band. Everyone had to have a shit hot guitar player. If you didn't have a shit hot guitar player, Simon, in the late 60s, right through the 70s,
Early
you weren't
70s.
going to be a very successful band.
No,
I think
not until 70s.
both Red Hot Chili Peppers guitar players, Hilly Slovak, and to more of an extent, John Frusciante, were huge Hendrix guys. Massive.
Frusciante is a Hendrix nut. John Frusciante is so if you want to talk about guys today who are close to him, okay. So John Frusciante, I'll give you that, but also Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam. He's pretty good too. He's a Hendrix nut as well. So
who's that?
Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam. So
oh wow, did not know.
And the other one, to an extent, Mike McCready as well. So they can play 57 strats through Marshalls pretty well. Yellow Ledbetter, for example, is a pretty good song if you want to check out and see any comparisons between that guitar playing and Hendrix. These guys pay homage to it.
So not only did he, with his unique style, pave the way, but he set the bar so high that that's it.
Yeah.
Well, Clapton said last year that the guitar is probably dying as an instrument. The guitar god is something of the past. When you look at guitar sales internationally, people aren't buying guitars like they were in 1970. So I don't know.
Different people are buying them. Yeah. People my age are buying dozens rather than Could I just go back a minute?
I've seen things online like digital guitar fretboards where you push a button and just follow the lights and you can play a song.
Isn't that Rock Guitarist or whatever that game was called? we had sort of coloured thing you had to do. I don't know anything about that. Can I just go back? Sorry, we were talking about Miles Davis, and Miles Davis and Hendrix planned to make a record in sort of 71. They planned to. It turns out, but get this: they sent a telegram. They had Tony Williams on drums. Who do you think they sent a telegram to ask to be in the band as the bass player?
Jack Bruce.
Oh, but quite close.
Jaco Pastorius.
Not John or Jaco Pastorius. No.
Well, Jack Bruce, give me a clue. What colour? What, black or white guy?
Oh, white guy. White guy.
Bill Wyman.
From Liverpool.
You're joking.
Paul McCartney. They sent him a telegram. They sent him a bloody telegram. Like, would you want to be in our band? That's wonderful, isn't it? See? Yeah, look at that. Boom.
Paul McCartney, a jazz bass player?
Well, who knows? Well, a bass player. We all know he's a great bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It just wasn't the right time for McCartney, frankly. But yeah, can you imagine that? Paul McCartney, Miles Davis, and Jimi Hendrix. If you're looking back on it, you go, is that going to work? But of course, nobody thought like that, did they? You just got, Hendrix had played with Steve Winwood, and you just go in and see what happens, don't you? Kind of thing, And boom! Look at that. That's an amazing thing, isn't it? I didn't know that. I definitely didn't know that. But that's astonishing. That is.
Wow. Yeah.
Wonderful.
If only.
Wow.
And there's a famous Ron Wood story that Ron Wood and Hendrix were roommates for 2 nights.
Were they? Go on. Tell me that. I don't know that. Go on.
When Ron Wood had his radio show, reflecting on the late 60s and that, and then he said that Jimmy stopped by and they stayed for a couple of nights and left a guitar there or something, or borrowed a guitar, and then the next night he died. Very sad.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know it's my favourite thing. Obviously he died, but he died in the flat that Handel had lived in. The classical composer George Frederick Handel. He died in the same flat as so him and Handel had lived in the same house 200 years apart.
Because I was
amazing.
I went through a 2-year phase of reading all about Hendrix, and there was all these conspiracy theories of that there was racism, and the ambulance took too long, and he should have been alive and stuff. But I personally think it was probably not necessarily like Brian Jones, but just a real unfortunate situation where the sleeping pills he took were just far too strong.
Well, he apparently took 9 of them, which is 18 times the recommended dose. That's probably not a brilliant thing to do. And a bottle of wine, see? Probably not a brilliant thing to do, is it?
Why? Yeah, I mean, why take that many? You just underestimated the potency.
I think probably. I don't know why. Why would you take nine? Prescribed barbiturates when half is the recommended dose.
Yeah,
That's probably a case for some suicide thing, or I mean, God, I mean, you see, you can go down the conspiracy,
And there was some funny things happened. There was that song Dolly Dagger, and that Mick Jagger had an affair with her, and then she died about 6 months later. Her name was Devon.
Yeah.
There was a lot of funny stuff happened about that time. It was very sad.
Lots of drug-induced madness and kind of,
Yeah,
thing.
and like you mentioned about psychedelia, he was the right place, the right time. Swinging London, mid-66.
Yeah.
Psychedelia was starting to boom. That in San Francisco. Him going to San Francisco, Monterey was a perfect opportunity to take one flower from what's that famous street, Chelsea? What's that street in London?
Carnaby Street.
Carnaby Street. Take a rose there and go to take a flower all the way to San Francisco.
Yeah.
The hippie movement, the flower children.
Yeah. Oh, completely.
And then
he
rocked.
Yeah.
He rocked up and he did a bit of funk and everything, and he did his final album. He wrote all this. A massive end of an era, wasn't it?
Yeah. Him, Morrison, Joplin.
27 Club. Eh?
The 27 Club. Yeah. I mean, I think that the 27. That's just more about all post-war babies, all gone through the same kind of drink and drugs thing, and eventually those things get you, don't they? And it's almost inevitable that you can't go through that period of experimentation, expansion, drug stuff that's interesting. Without there being casualties, and there were casualties.
Well, he may have built up a tolerance of other things, and then got a different batch or a different room, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, all those things. And I think that in the early 70s. I mean, let's get into it. I mean, the quality of the drugs was different to the quality of the drugs now. So I mean, it's kind of much purer, much more kind of thing.
If you look at apparently the amount of LSD that John Lennon was taking, he was taking 6 times the amount in one shot than people were taking in the late 70s. So that these guys were heavy hitters.
Yeah, completely different. Well, that's about purity. So when the drug dealer moves in on something, starts cutting it, famously cut things with rat poison and all sorts of other rubbish, because obviously you're trying to make your drugs go. So apologies for this. You're trying to make your drugs go as far as possible.
Yeah.
And the thing to do is to cut it with any old rubbish you can find. Sugar, all sorts of things, and still have an effect, but not so much as the pure stuff in the in the 60s kind of thing. as you say.
Wow.
Go ask Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, I think. I think he's a reluctant hero, isn't he? There's a part of Hendrix, that shy, person, reserved, that probably had some problems with fame.
He seemed to like white woman, didn't he? Swedish woman,
Well,
blonde woman.
any women probably.
I think I've seen a picture of him on a bed with these tapestries and those famous English beds with the Moroccan rugs on the wall, and not him, but him and two blondes. So yeah.
See, only. Oh dear, what a boy! Yeah. Well, that's the time, isn't it? That's the era. That's groupies and all of that. I mean, have you ever read? On a slight tangent, Pamela Des Barres' book, I'm with the band. No, that's Cynthia and somebody else, isn't it? No, Pamela Des Barres. I'm going for Des Barres.
Was that the 14-year-old that I mixed up Jimmy Page?
Well, she was. I don't know if she was 14, but she was young, and she hung out with Jimmy Page. Well, I mean, they had an affair. Let's be frank. But if you read her, I reread it recently. It was just happened to appear. It's just two people in love. Basically. It's Jimmy Page. Infatuation with her. It's and that's the era, the times, isn't it? The era that he went through. It's an interesting read, that as a kind of woman's viewpoint on it.
I think Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix might have got a bit nervous when they said, "Can I drop you off at work?" No, but you can drop me off at school.
Yeah.
That almost famous movie's based a little bit on that with the lead girl. What's her name? Is it Penny Lane? Goldie Hawn's daughter.
You mean the Cameron Crowe?
Yeah. So it's based a little bit on that.
Almost famous.
Almost famous.
Almost famous. Yeah.
Yeah. Where she's clearly. She's clearly.
Thank you, Kubrick lover.
15 or 16. She's not. She's not 18 or 19.
Cynthia Plastercaster is the name of the woman who plastercasted Hendrix and other people.
Yeah, I personally think that Hendrix would have settled down because there's no mention of him really. I think the books I read, he owned an apartment in New York. That was about it. He had a unit or flat in New York, and pretty bohemian kind of guy, eh?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And just amazing. Just to summarise everything, because I got dinner to cook, unfortunately, but amazing amount of body work in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, an amazing, massively creative person, and as we said, kind of, the Mount Rushmore of guitarists. Kind of took it to places, and people have been taking that legacy on ever since. But I don't think we haven't seen anybody else take the guitar on like Hendrix did, really.
And I will say, and I got a lot of friends who are not musically inclined, who Hendrix was human. He had some bad nights. He played a lot of bum notes. I'm not sure if he was human or there was just someone spiking his drink, but there's a lot of crappy performances too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
Cream
overall,
played some shit performances too.
Yeah.
It was just part and parcel, Carl, of that time. I think Yeah. Yeah. They were going to play some bad gigs, hey.
Oh yeah.
Inevitably, I think that happens, doesn't it? Especially if you're doing a lot of drugs and stuff like that. I think your playing is going to go off. But I think he would have got over that, and and if he'd managed to get over it, he would have.
Is there any more stuff in the vault or any live footage we don't know about, or is that pretty much it, you think?
Don't know.
I think that's probably pretty much it. I think by now, you know, there's the odd to get the odd sort of
because
new stuff coming out.
Hendrix is so good.
Sorry, I'm laughing. Arvin Gaunt, we talk about Cynthia Plastercast. He said, "Can you find a picture of Hendrix's Plastercast?" You think I'm typing that into my search engine, Arvin? You've got another thing coming. I've got children. People will be round.
On one of those Jimi Hendrix biopic movies, they've got the scene there where Cynthia's there and she's showing Jimi Hendrix some specimens that she's taken, and she pulls out one that's Keith's moon. That is Keith Moon's.
Keith Moon's, even.
And it's only a short fellow. It's only about 5 inches or something like that. And so Jimi Hendrix, the guy acting as Jimi Hendrix, said, "Well, come here, baby. I'll show you something 4 times the size of that bugger."
Oh no!
Just for a.
Anyway, guys.
Here we go. This is just for Arvin. There we are. Look. There's a picture of Cynthia Plastercaster with some of her
her collection.
I'm not getting very good at photo. So there you go, Arvin. How was that? How was that for you, sir?
God.
Oh dear. And on that bombshell, yes.
All right. Been a pleasure hanging out for 2 hours with you cats. It's amazing how time flies.
Blimey. Have we started?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
No, he in summary, I think that we don't need to sound like parrots and repeat ourselves, but Hendrix is there'll always have a special place in my life. Always.
Sure.
Yeah, and mine too. You know, I was, absolutely. I can remember seeing them on top of the pops.
Sober, drunk, or on anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a heavyweight. And we forgot to mention that. We mentioned a little bit, but the core of the guy deep down was a bit like Eric and a lot of these guys. You catch them in a small room playing, they love to play the blues.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
he
think that's
loved
true.
his jazz, he loved his funk, he loved his rock, but the heart of him was the blues.
Well, apparently that's all he had in his record collection was just blues albums.
Blues stuff, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, and he's the sort of guy, like I said before, if there's anything in the vault, you got guys getting their credit cards out, running to the music store, calling up their friends, going online. Where is it? I want it. He's just, any hint of a live album or some rare recording, every guitar aficionado in the world is hunting it down.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
That's the sort of presence he has.
We say good night to Kubrick Lover. Thanks, Kubrick Lover, for contributions, and Arvin as well.
Yeah, cheers,
really
Kubrick.
Nice to have
We're
have
signing
you in the
off.
chat.
We're signing off anyway.
Yeah, I've got to go and get my children up for school.
Cool.
And get to work. So it was just Arvin and Kubrick Lover. So yeah, thanks both for joining in and making great contribution. And Phil as well. Neither was somebody else. Phil, have a great day. Phil's working through the night. Phil works on US time, as far as I can tell, not on the British time. But yeah, guys, thanks for dropping in.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
It's been really cool.
And in closing, what does Hendrix mean to you guys, Andrew and Simon?
Top 3 guitarist. My top is my top 3 guitar players ever.
The Strat man for sure.
So your top 3, Andrew, was Jimmy, Eric, and who's the other third? Keith?
Oh, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
awesome.
No room for Eddie in the top 3 on that bombshell.
He must be number 4.
Keith and Eddie make up the top 5, but you can
top
only
5. Yeah. I mean, yes. I think he's been the greatest rock guitarist of all time. I don't think there's any argument about that. I still think that's true.
I'm not gonna argue with No.
As I say, for me, he's the strap man. You know.
Well, we forgot to mention this, but
That's
that's
cool.
actually a good point. There's only been one guy since Hendrix's unfortunate demise that who said, I don't want to be compared to him, but I want to pay homage to him. We'll talk about him next week. Is obviously Steve Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
As far who's had the balls, the nous to forget about Voodoo Child, but try things like Third Stone from the Sun.
Yeah.
Wow.
And his version of Little Wing is just
Yeah.
mind
Oh,
blowing.
wow. Yeah.
Mind blowing. It still sends a shiver up my spine.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, that's great. We finished on a high note.
Awesome.
Oh. Sorry, cheap jokes are my forte.
my high was different.
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Kubrick lover. Mine's higher than yours. Yes. Kubrick lover saying it. Tune in, folks, for the next episode of the Sticky Fingers Show. Yes. And on that bombshell, it's time I went and woke my children up and made them breakfast.
Bye.
Take care,
All
guys.
right, guys.
See you on Sunday, Andrew.